I want to say a pleasant good evening to political scientist Dr. Indira Rampersad. Thank you so much again for taking time out to link with us. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, good evening, Mikey
Yes,
K. How
indeed.
are you?
A lot better hearing your voice. I know you were out and about, and thank you so much for gracing us once again with your voice and your thoughts. So much is taking place. Prime Minister has made it quite clear he's not afraid of losing elections based on property tax. He said that he declared as he defended his government's decision to impose property tax on citizens. We were just talking to Opuch West MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Finance, Dave Tanku, and he made it quite clear that it just simply does not add up. And then people are saying, listen, what's going to happen? We had attorney at law, Robin Montano, here last week, and he said, listen, he got two notices that had to be paid, one for him at the same residence for another person by the name of Wendy. The one he had to pay was less. Wendy, who lives at the same address, according to the documents, has to pay less. So much discrepancies. Is there a price to pay if this thing is not gotten, if you don't get it right?
Clearly, there will be a price to pay. The mere fact that they went to Parliament and created quite a scene there about trying to reduce it from 3% to 2% suggests that they're seriously worried, and that actually came out of the talks, the conversations with the Prime Minister that he's been having on the ground, and he realized that even the PNM supporters are not happy with this property tax. Mikey K, I don't know if you recall, but Margaret Thatcher lost an election based on property tax, and in 2010 the COP slogan was "Axe the Tax," and that led the People's Partnership into government with Mr. Manning losing 29-12.
Yeah. Then there has to be something else that is politically engineering this move. People have weighed in and saying that it's a matter of getting money. They need revenue to campaign. But when you have citizens who are under the perception that this money is for garbage collection, to make sure that our grounds are well kept, our recreational grounds in our area, as far as imposing whatever needs to be imposed to help us in our communities, but we're hearing otherwise. And even if there are discrepancies, basically you have to comply and then complain after the fact.
Well, yes, and the whole thing seems to be totally in disarray because the Revenue Authority is not yet established. What has been happening is a number of things have been happening that would have prompted this. The objections. A number of people have been objecting to the assessments that they got, but there's no proper Revenue Authority for this to go through. It should actually go through the Tax Appeal Board if you're appealing a decision, like this. So there was really no need for the Revenue Authority in the first place, I think. But that aside, what also is prompting it is the fact that within that Property Tax Act, there's a provision that if you don't pay up, the government can seize your property. And maybe this is the goal, to make it unaffordable and then seize the private property of citizens. Because many citizens, given these dire economic times, and we are in the economic streets, would not be able to afford that property tax. People are telling me, some of them, that they got $10,000 and $20,000 that they have to pay in property tax per year, and they're holding their heads and bawling. They don't know what to do because they just cannot afford it.
Yeah, and then to have the finance minister say that based on the latest article report on Trinidad and Tobago, which is on March 11th of this year, the IMF said additional revenue could be generated by adjusting the fiscal regime of the energy sector, boosting non-energy revenue, and of course, strengthening tax compliance and administration. He said that the IMF identified implementing the property tax and establishing the Revenue Authority as two measures to achieve that goal. I mean, we're coming out of COVID. This is post-COVID. One would think that perhaps there were things on the drawing board. The government had things that were lined up to deal with generating revenue, getting foreign investment to come in and what have you. But the only thing we're faced with now is we need to tax the people to see how best we can serve them.
And while you're taxing the people, you're not increasing their salaries. That 2% and 2% and 4% just can't cut it because of the escalating price of food, fuel, housing, and transportation. So the purchasing power of the citizens have actually been considerably reduced. It's declined, while the expenditure, the cost of living, particularly the retail index and items which I just mentioned, have escalated significantly. The property tax would just add to their bill, to their expenses. We see cable is going up, internet going up all the time. The cable TV is going up, electricity is also going up, and so the people are now going to be left with less money in their pockets than before because the salaries are not increasing commensurate with the cost of living.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a bit and look at what happened over the weekend. I mean, we had quite a weekend filled with murders, and I think by now people are just perhaps, I'm sad to say, immune to what's happening around them, and maybe that's one of their survival traits that they're using. If I don't focus on it, I guess it's not going to reach at my doorsteps. But the reality is, it's here. I mean, so far for the year, if I'm not mistaken, 123 murders. And meanwhile, the Commissioner of Police saying that she's hopeful for a breakthrough. In a voice note, Commissioner of Police Earl Haywood Christopher condemned the murders and promised that the police were working to find those responsible. Now, we've heard that before, Dr. Rampersad. We've heard that the Prime Minister said all resources are going to be used to track down these people, to deal with it. But where are we at this point?
I'm in a vacuum. We're in a vacuum, Mikee K, because what we need is not these kinds of utterances. What we need is a comprehensive crime plan. We need to have a clear-cut policy, a multiple-dimensional policy, because the crime, all different kinds. We have drugs and we have gangs. I think we have talked about this before in your channel. Yeah. People are living in mortal fear. We have domestic violence. We have school violence. Okay, we have arms coming in en masse, and nobody knows who's bringing the arms in. Nobody knows who's bringing the drugs in, or people know and turning a blind eye. I don't know if the government have that intelligence to gather that information to deal with the problem. So you have to get to the root of the problem. You have to understand the root of the problem, and then you can tackle the solutions. But you have to have a clear-cut policy, and we have not yet seen that comprehensive plan. So they say all resources are going to be deployed. How much is all resources? I don't wonder what that would all mean. Okay, I heard about 100 million at some point. That is just even, at the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't even scratch the tip of the iceberg. The kind of resources we're going to need, it cannot just come from Trinidad and Tobago. It has to be international, regional and international, because we also have to man our waters and our borders to prevent those drugs and arms from coming into the country. It is not something that could be done overnight, but the government has been in power going now 9 years. Election due next year, 2025. I'm not sure whether they will call it early or not. But the point is that the problem has not improved. It has only exacerbated year after year after year.
Yeah, and you're right. And of course, the Minister of National Security, Mr. Hines, indicated that the government has been tackling this type of crime in different ways, and perhaps definitely is not enough. He identified the boosting of this country's cooperation with its international partners as one of them. He said, we have found that the majority of the weapons that contribute to this sort of thing are coming from the United States. Now, I mean, this is something you and I have spoken about. You've added your voice to that. You've just said it. We know that. He said the U.S. government has been working with local law enforcement agencies to deal with the inflow of illegal guns. Then why is it that we are not seeing a dent in this situation?
And also the drugs, as I mentioned before. Yeah. The drugs are coming from South America to the Caribbean as a transshipment point, Trinidad and Tobago being one of those. And we're talking about cocaine as well as the marijuana, and shipped to North America, Canada, and Europe. The United States have to be a major stakeholder, major participant in this fight against crime, because if the drugs are going there and the demand are coming from them, they have to stem the demand. If the arms are coming from them, we have to stem the arms. My position has always been, if you don't have the arms and the ammunition, then the murderers are not going to have the weapons to commit the murders. So once we deal with that problem, we deal with the arms problem, we deal with the drugs problem, we would be going a long way towards alleviating the crime crisis.
Yeah. And now I want to shift gears again, because when I have you on, there's so much things I want to touch on. I want to thank you again. The opposition leader has called on smaller parties to stop fighting each other. It's quite clear the UNC, which is ready for general elections, will of course close nominations in mid next month and start screening in May. What's important here, which stands out, is that the opposition leader, and very strong language, she said, we must remain laser focused on the enemy and not each other. Our mission is to win the next general elections and bring about safety and security. If anyone is not with you, they are against you and are surely working with the PNM. Strong language. What's your takeaway from that?
Well, she needs to court these small parties, but at the same time, they have to bring something to the table. In a way, it's a very ticklish situation. It's a difficult situation that the UNC finds itself in, because they're fighting each other. We see the NTA and Philip Alexander's party. What is it called? PDP? PEP.
Yeah.
Yes. PEP. We see there were war of words there. If all of them coalesce, and they're making overtures to the UNC, which suggests that they think that the UNC has a good chance of winning the election. The fact that they're gravitating towards the UNC, not to the PNM. The PNM is the enemy here. What she is saying is that united we stand, divided we fall. So she's making this call for national unity politically, because once you have all hands on deck, the chances of winning the election is much better.
Yeah, but she doesn't seem to be naive to the fact that not everyone, and as you mentioned, everyone who's on board needs to come with something. She said that she warned that there would be all kinds of tactics to damage the UNC from within and outside. Then how do you basically vet, those who are coming on board? I mean, just by simply saying, you need to come to the table with something. What do you bring? Are you going to mobilize? Are you going to be out there? What is your political strategy? How can we gain something together in order for us to have political victory? But there has to be some point as well where you draw the line and say, listen, I am not too sure about your intentions. If you don't lay it out where we can see it, where we can say, listen, it's transparent as can be, because in the 11th hour, those people that you say come on board may end up being a liability to you.
And that is where I think there has to be some kind of written agreement, concrete written agreement. It can't be a loose arrangement. The loose arrangement, leave it open for that kind of, behavior. So we've seen over the decades, many alliances between whether it was the ULF, Club 88, UNC over time, and some of them have survived. In 1986, they won the election with the NAR as a coalition. And they survived the 5 years, but after that it split. In 2010, they also won the election as a partnership, as a coalition. So I think, yes, the way to go is coalition politics, but you have to make sure the coalition doesn't crack beforehand. So you have a pre-election accommodation, which they did in the local government election with the NTA. So whichever seat the NTA fought, the UNC did not. And you have a post-election coalition with all of these smaller parties, because the whole idea here is to mobilize those few hundreds or thousands of votes that you need, not so much, not so many, in those marginal constituencies to win them. And we are talking about seats like St. Joseph, Tunapuna, San Fernando West, Tokusande Grande, even La Hoketa. They have Maruga and Sawa Barataria, which they need to retain. So they need to have that coalition, I think, pre-election accommodation, a post-election coalition, or an election coalition at least, to win, to beat the PNM. Because I think while the PNM is not the most popular party, because when you look at the combined votes of all the opposition parties, the UNC plus the other smaller ones, it's more than the PNM. It's more than for the PNM. So the PNM in some ways is a minority government, but the way the boundaries are drawn, I think naturally gives the PNM an edge.
Yeah. I want to close up by asking you this, and language is so important, especially in politics. Looking back at some of the statements that was made by the opposition leader, throughout the years, she would always try to include everyone around as far as the decision making. But what stood out here, she said that the UNC must promote upwards from within. Activists must know they can become councillors, councillors to become MPs and senators. And candidates will be selected on merit, not nepotism. Now, this one stands out the most. She says, I know, singular, meaning herself, meaning I know who worked, who sacrificed, I know who toiled. I know the members, I know the supporters, and I know the activists and local government reps who have worked hard to mobilize for events and go above and beyond this party. Is she taking that control to say, listen, I don't need any third-hand information on who are the people that have brought us to this point, who has made the sacrifice, who has shown the commitment, dedication, and passion and loyalty? Is this a different Kamala Prasad-Bissessar in laying this out to her members?
No, I think she demonstrated that in the last election, where she has been bringing the councillors in. We see a lot of the younger members there in her party, the MPs, were councillors because they have been working very hard in the ground. And this is the position she's taking, that the people who has been working for the party are the people, are the ones who are going to be rewarded with the seats, because you also want them to work to win their seats. Even though they're safe seats, you can never be too safe, So better safe than sorry, as they say. Also it is to exclude opportunists, people who think Johnny come lately, who think that they can just jump into the fray and get seats. And then also for those who have not been so loyal and who have betrayed the party in some respects, who have betrayed her as a leader and others, who have not been working their seats as they should be. She is fully aware of all of this. You would be amazed at how much these political leaders are aware of. And so she's making these statements to let the detractors know that this time round, it's serious business. You have to work and you have to earn that position of a potential member of parliament.
All right. Dr. Indira, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Rampersad. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We'll be checking in with you periodically. Thank you again, and keep up the good work.
You're most welcome, Mikee K.